Right, I'm here with Adrian Warnock, one of the leaders at Jubilee Church in London. How are you doing today, Adrian?
I'm doing pretty good.
Now, you are the author of the new book, um, a book about the resurrection, entitled Raised with Christ. Is that correct?
That's right.
And tell me, now, you put a great deal of importance on the resurrection. Now, why is that, Adrian?
Well, look, Paul puts it this way: without the resurrection, we'd still be dead in our sins. And I think it's just interesting that so many Christians today focus on the cross, which is good that we do, but often we then neglect the resurrection and we sort of take it for granted.
Hmm. Wow. So then, what was it? What what inspired you to write this book? You know, it's like you've been blogging for years. You've been a leader at a church, and then it just seemed suddenly there was something I noticed a lot of tweets, blog posts, and things about the resurrection. Was there anything in particular that led you to write this book? Any any particular inspiration, a person or something that jogged it in your mind?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things happened at once, really. I was involved in quite a bit of argument online about the atonement and also offline. We had some massive rows actually in British evangelicalism about the meaning of the cross that led to certain conferences splitting and all that. And this was all going on in April 2007. But something else was going on in that I was feeling pretty worn out at the time, to be honest. Like you said, I got a lot of things on. But I think I'd sort of started doing some of it in my own strength a little bit, if I'm honest. And
Hmm.
my pastor actually rang me up one day and said, "Adrian, would you preach about the resurrection on Easter Sunday?" And I'm like, I'm pretty worn out. But anyway, I prayed about it and really felt, yeah, I should go for this. And so I did. And as I was studying for this sermon, I started to realise there wasn't much written about it, about the
Hmm.
resurrection. And in the background as well, the other interesting thing is all these people who've been arguing about the cross, it's really about penal substitution. And those people who were rejecting penal substitution, well, what they were saying, one of the things they were saying, it was only one of the things. Most of what they said I just ignored, and it was, well, not ignored, but you answer anything, that's nonsense, that's wrong. But one of the things they did say, which I found more difficult to just ignore, was that Christians, and in particular people like me, who believe in penal substitution have a tendency to neglect the resurrection, tendency to focus on Good
Hmm.
Friday, if you like, and ignore Easter Sunday. And I found that got under my skin a little bit. And so then, as I started to study the resurrection, I discovered Spurgeon had said that in his day there were no books about the resurrection at all that were available, and that he felt that the preaching of his day neglected the resurrection, and that as a direct result of that, there wasn't enough salvation going on. And so we needed to get the gospel right in order to see people saved, apart from anything else. But also in terms of all the consequences in our own lives of really grasping the implications of the resurrection.
Hmm. Would you say, with Easter season coming up, would you say that there tends to be too much of a focus on the resurrection around Easter time, whereas maybe um, it should be something that more so changes our lives, and not
Yeah.
necessarily something that we celebrate once a year, but maybe something we celebrate every day.
Oh, well, absolutely, and certainly at the very least every Sunday, because we moved the date of our meetings from Saturdays to Sundays all those thousands of years ago, precisely because of the resurrection, precisely to celebrate the resurrection. I think it's Alistair Begg who says every Sunday is actually Resurrection Sunday, and so we should be celebrating a Jesus who's not some kind of dead, departed hero, but a living, active saint, who is with us. Not just a saint, he's a God, and he is the God. A God. Listen to me, I'm sounding like a Mormon there. He is the God, and he's living inside of us. He's living in heaven, and he is wanting to lead his church. And because of the resurrection, all these things are true, and we can know him today, which is an astonishing thing.
Hmm. Now, you say you don't really see a whole lot of material written on the resurrection. So would you say that your book is kind of the book um, on the topic of the resurrection today, or are there any other materials you've used to help you in studying for this?
Oh, for sure. There are actually a lot more books now than there were in Spurgeon's day, but relative to some of the other books and the other subjects, there's a lot fewer. So if you were to go into the average Christian bookshop and say, what books have you got on the resurrection? They may not have any, or they may just have a few. I think the ones that probably stand out for me are, obviously there's a lot of good books on the apologetics of the resurrection, and I do cover that in mine. Gary Habermas or something, I can never say his name. He's written a lot of great stuff, and some of the older stuff as well on that. But most of those books don't really talk much about the doctrinal implications of the resurrection, and if you're starting to get onto that, it's a little bit more tricky. I think N.T. Wright's Big Fat Thick Green Book, which will surprise some of my listeners or readers, no doubt, for me to hear me saying I think it's a great book, because I do have some concerns about Wright in some of his other books. But his book on the resurrection is great, but it is big and fat and thick. And he has written a summary of it, but I've not read the summary. I've only read the full thing. So, but I did find that very helpful. Another short book that came out in this year was it was called Lifted by Sam Albury, and that's pretty good. That's a pretty neat book.
Well, Adrian, it was really nice talking to you. And for those of you reading out there, pick up reading or listening, I guess. This is the first video audio interview for ForgivenGeek.com. Pick up a copy of Raised with Christ. And Adrian, thank you for doing this interview. Signing off.